So hi, everyone. I'm Darlene D. Rose. I am one of the board members for the San Francisco Women in Film San Francisco Bay Area. And we want to welcome everyone to Conversations and Connections on Funding Your Film. If you are new to WIFSPA, we are a volunteer-run organization, a nonprofit. And what we do is we provide networking, educational, and social opportunities for over 10,000 people in the San Francisco Bay Area who are actively involved in film and TV and digital media. Our stated mission is to empower, promote, and celebrate women's creative work. So if you're interested in joining us, please feel free to take a look in the chat box, and you can get more information from our website and links there. So on behalf of our board of directors, which include Julie Rubio, Diane Walsh, Carol Hall, Neil Unerdam, Kelly White, Nicole Carlson, Amy Zins, Julie Rubio, and myself, thank you so much for choosing to spend some of your afternoon with us. A couple of housekeeping details. If at any time you have a question, please feel free to type it into the chat. We will be monitoring it, and we will be opening for a Q&A later in the conversation. So we will be keeping those. If you want to save the chat at the very end, you do that by clicking on the three dots at the bottom of the chat screen and then click on Save Chat. We really appreciate everybody muting their audio during the conversation unless you are called upon to unmute and ask a question. And we'd also like to encourage you to click on the View Select Speaker. Everybody's probably so familiar with Zoom right now, but you'll get the best visual experience by selecting a speaker. That's it. So if you would, Kelly, share the community partner slide. So first of all, we want to thank our community partners. They really help us to get the word out on all of our events. So first off, the fellow Women in Film partners that include Women in Film US, as well as Women in Film and Video New England. We also have a number of local partners right now who are helping us promote this event. Brave Maker down in Redwood City, the San Francisco Peninsula, the No Film School, No Trust Fund, No Problem. That is one of our speakers' organizations. She'll talk more about that. And then also the National Association of Independent Latino Film Producers. So we're really grateful to them. So you can take that slide down, Olivia. Thank you. So I would also like to now introduce my fellow board member, Kelly White, who helped with organizing this event with me. And we are going to introduce you to our speakers panelists. So Olivia, go ahead and spotlight me and Kelly, and then Kelly, you're on. Oops, you're muted.
Unmute. Sorry about that. Let's start again. Thank you guys for being here today. I'd like to introduce Lane Michael Stanley. Lane is a transgender writer and director making community-embedded work around queerness, healing, grief, recovery, restorative justice, and housing insecurity. Their award-winning short and feature films have played at festivals including Austin, Outfest, Sidewalk, and American Dance Festival. Lane has experience finding grants, identifying consistent funding sources that filmmakers should be aware of, and understanding how filmmakers can expand their ideas of what their film is doing to search for grants that aren't just for film.
Great. I'm going to be introducing our second panelist, who is Tracy Held. Tracy is a multiracial Chinese Eastern European American writer who tells stories about people who want to save the world but struggle with the human interaction part. She co-founded Erosion, a film production company dedicated to conservation comedy, film, and TV, and serves as the vice chair of the Writers Guild of America West Asian American Writers Committee. In addition to writing for the stage and screen, Tracy has an extensive background in fundraising and marketing and offers consulting to develop effective fundraising strategies. Her specialties include grant writing, crowdfunding, and direct solicitation.
Our third presenter today is Sarah Elizabeth Timmons. She established Life Out Loud Films in 2008 to create quality, inspiring impact films that champion women. Her films have been seen in theaters, HBO, Amazon, Netflix, the Hallmark Channel, Stars, Showtime, and internationally. She has worked with Oscar and Emmy-winning talent like Jane Seymour, Ellen Burstyn, Chris Cooper, Josh Lucas, and Mackenzie Foy. And writers, oops, my share dropped off. So let me, sorry, 1 second. And writers like a New York Times bestselling author, David Baldacci. Every film has featured award-winning talent and secured international distribution. She field produced the Emmy-nominated HBO docuseries McMillions for Mark Wahlberg's company, which premiered at Sundance in 2020. And her latest film, The Upside of Falling Down, starring Antonia Gentry from Ginny and Georgia and Caleb Lynch from Lord of the Rings, is projected to shoot in Ireland in 2025. She's also a film consultant, coach, and founder of No Film School, No Trust Fund, No Problem, which is an organization to create community and education while fostering inspiration and authenticity for indie filmmakers. Sarah Elizabeth believes she has a responsibility through film to spark conversations that inspire action and ignite change.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Okay, so we are going to move into the core of our panel discussion tonight, and we're going to start off with 2 quick surveys so we can get a sense of where people's interest levels lie. So the first thing is we're going to ask, in what budget level or range are you currently working in? In what budget level or range are you currently working in? So Olivia is going to go ahead and put that up in the survey, and we'll see what we get.
Are you able to do the survey, Olivia, or should I just pop it in the chat?
I got it.
Oh, you did get it. Okay.
Okay, so go ahead and
If we
send it.
can't, here, I'll put, here's some options. So you guys can start answering it in the chat if you want.
Yep.
Get started on it. A lot of 5K to 30,000,
Yeah.
3 to 10 million, 3 to 10 million, 5K to 30,000. Seems like the kind of almost two, up
Yeah.
to 1 million, up to 100,000, 5 to 30,000.
Okay.
So it kind of gives us a little guidance on what we're looking at.
There's a few folks that are working at the higher end and a lot of folks that are working in the 5 to 30. That's great. Okay. So the next question is, are you looking to fundraise through grants, donations, crowdfunding, investors, all of the above, or some combination of the above? So go ahead and Olivia, throw that up.
It's in the chat too, if you just want to answer in the chat. Oh, I put it in, I thought I put it in the chat, but I think I might have put it in just.
Okay, we have a nice range. All the above, combo, grants, investors. Great. All right, feel free to keep on responding. So while people are kind of putting their input in there, one of the reasons Kelly and I are really thrilled to be talking to these three panelists is because for us, they are really embody a new way, the new way of thinking about how to fund films, because we all know that film funding has changed quite a bit. So we're going to go ahead and kick off with a question to each of them that we have at least give them a clue that we're going to ask them, and then we'll open it up to a series of questions. So Tracy, I'm going to start with you. Can you talk a little bit about how does the filmmaker's thoughts and approach to money and asking for funding have an impact on the film funding that they actually get?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I think that the mindset that people go into fundraising has everything to do with how they fundraise and whether they're successful. So that kind of impacts people in a few different directions. The first thing is if you feel confident in your project, if you feel confident that your project is worthy of being made, first of all, and then by extension, worthy of other people investing in it, either through donations or investment or some other form of contribution, then the way that you talk to people and approach them will come from a place of, I'm creating something really cool and I would love for you to come on board with me, in comparison to somebody who is entering this feeling afraid of the concept of money, afraid of the concept of asking people for help, afraid of, things that all of us are concerned about, which is failure, whatever negative thoughts people bring to their fundraising campaigns. Those things affect how they're implemented. In addition to driving how the creator and the filmmaker raises money, that level of confidence and those attitudes about fundraising and money affect how other people perceive of that campaign, and also how confident they feel in investing in it. So if I'm talking to people with a lot of anxiety and reluctance, then other people are going to be a little bit nervous about handing over their money to support my project. So those are kind of the highest level things I think people should be considering. The other side of how you think about money in fundraising is that if you have a low stakes situation, your effort can be low stakes. And if you have a high stakes situation, then your effort is more likely to be very serious. So what I mean by that is there are some crowdfunding platforms where it's all or nothing. Either you raise the amount that you say that you need, or you don't get any of the money. And so I think everyone on this call has likely seen campaigns that were very ambitious or that had a very strict minimum threshold, and people work really hard to meet that minimum when they need it to get the project done. In contrast, if people have noticed campaigns where the person running the campaign was very nervous about, well, I don't want to not get anything, so I'm going to make it, I'll take whatever I can get, then sometimes people kind of go into the campaign feeling like, I'm not going to raise the full amount, so why put myself in that position? But there's no incentive then to raise the full amount. I think that's kind of my overview of how I like to start this conversation. And it's just really important for people to check in with themselves about why do they need to do fundraising, and are they actually ready to do it?
Thank you. Actually, that's a really great way to to sort of kick off this conversation, because we're all putting ourselves out there, right? And we need to know how we're presenting. So that actually leads us right, Sarah Elizabeth, to your question. So now we're shifting from the mindset we bring in, what's the mindset we're walking into? So what's the most important thing to understand about a potential investor you're talking to?
Yeah, I think it does piggyback on what she just said, but it is the alignment, in my opinion, of the why. Because I mean, we all know the state of the industry, and we can't look an investor in the eye and say, yes, I can promise you that you're going to get all your money back. And so how is it that you can confidently talk to somebody and sleep at night and feel good about, all right, I'm going to give you this opportunity. I'd like for you to invest, give me money. And so I think that that's where I always tell filmmakers, it's really not about the money. It's about the alignment of something greater. What is it that I can promise and give to you as an investor that regardless of how the film financially performs, because there's so many films that everybody sees, but financially it doesn't necessarily perform well, or the opposite. So I always like to look at, what can I promise you that I know I can deliver on? And I find that typically most investors, those whys fit into three buckets. It's a personal why. I'm speaking to, I believe your investor believes in a cause. It's very important to them. They want to bring awareness to the cause. It might be a subject matter, whether it's football or personal passion. It might be an alignment with domestic violence or Alzheimer's, or it could just be that I'd like to see more family friendly films out there. But what is it that you can align with that personally they say, I want this film to be out there. And by the virtue of it being out there, my why was fulfilled. So it's not that they're only fulfilled if they're getting a financial return. Sometimes it is, I believe in you and I wish somebody would invest in my child. Like, I want to invest in you, or you remind me of me when I was young. And then there's like the business why. There's some investors where they just sold their business and they need to offset that. So Section 181 of the tax code allows them to do that. It could be that their business is focused on families. So you're helping them really align with their consumer base, and that's a positive to them. Or maybe your film is directly reaching teenagers or the YA audience, and that is their consumer base. So for them to have their name behind this film is going to further their business. Or maybe it's you're bringing economic development or tourism to an area or a community. Now, all of a sudden, just the virtue of your film being made and getting out there, they fulfilled their business why. And then the third one is the easiest, I think, of all of them, which is the ego. Somebody that really just wants to be able to say that, my name, I'm the producer at the beginning of this film, or I got to meet the stars and go on set, or had an opportunity to be a part of the red carpet experience. So I really encourage filmmakers to not think so much, yes, you want to approach people that have the ability and the wealth to give at the level of your minimum investment, but it's really not just about the money. You need to feel good about, I'm fulfilling your other why, whether it's personal, whether it's business, or whether it is ego. So I think that a lot of times with our decks and our materials, everyone, the cliche is, why you, why now? And I always add a third thing to that. Why you, why now? What are my hot buttons and my hot points that you're fulfilling?
Thank you. That's really, really, that is a new way of looking at things, right? Is not just I'm asking for money, but what is it achieving? Why am I doing this? And that actually leads me into, Lane, the question that I want to talk to you about, which is, or start off with you, is, so now you get comfortable that you're going to ask for funding, you've aligned the whys, and it's still hard work. It's still difficult. It's really, sometimes it's like, really, I spend my day trying to raise money. How do you maintain inspiration for doing the project, even in that kind of a context? How do you keep that inspiration going?
Yeah, I definitely think that the why that Sarah Elizabeth is talking about is a huge answer here too, right? Like, just like you want these kind of metrics that are fulfilling in themselves, kind of regardless of what happens in distribution, you also want those metrics that are fulfilling for you, right? Like what is meaningful to you about the project? So is it that you're getting to connect, sometimes when we're building our fundraising platform is the wrong word. When we're building our packages for fundraising, we're doing a lot of work sometimes with our collaborators, with our cinematographers to build lookbooks, or we're assembling a team, and so you are like, does that ability to connect with people around the project, is that kind of a win, regardless of what happens with the raise. And there's some realism too of, like, especially in a medium like film, it's not like, if we write a short screenplay and don't put the money together to be able to make it, not a lot of people are like in the market for short screenplays, right? So I think also like finding some creative fulfillment alongside when certain projects have to go into a business mode, then what is your creative outlet as well? So I think for me, I am a little famous for having too many projects at any given time, and you don't have to do 6 different things at once. But for me to be able to be like to have things in different phases allows me to when something is in a business phase, which is what I would call a fundraising phase, you know, it might not be that project that's creatively fulfilling in that moment because I'm having to put on my fundraising hat. I'm having or I'm just waiting, right? Like there's so much waiting in film, or you have all this momentum to finish the film and then you're just waiting for film festivals to get back to you, you know, but that you can be kind of moving things forward on other projects while you're in a waiting phase or a business phase with one, just helps me kind of maintain my sanity. But absolutely like understanding, you know, like some scripts, even if they don't make it into the world, if you learned something by writing it, you know, you got to connect with people around the project, you got to learn something, either like a area of research that you were passionate about that you didn't get to know about before, you were able to like express something, even if it's just, you know, to your partner, your mom or something, you know, that you were able to express something about your experience that person didn't know. Is that a win? So finding our wins where we can get them. Obviously, if a fundraising campaign goes successfully, then that's a really big win too, right? Like that also counts. So I think taking time also to and this is something I've been trying to get better at the last few years, to take a minute to celebrate when those wins do come in, rather than just being like, oh, okay, great, we got into that film festival, off we go. You know, like to taking me like, oh, that's a big deal, right? Like that might not have happened, that wasn't guaranteed. Or like, yeah, our stretch goal was, you know, $70,000 and we raised 50, and you could sit around and be like, boo, you know, or you could be like, holy crap, we raised $50,000 in a world where like nothing's guaranteed, right? So trying to maintain perspective wherever we can and stay attached to the mission.
I love that too, because I've been in before where people will say, let's look at the small gratitudes. And it's really important to remember that some of the small things that happen are really big and important. The relationships you pointed out, the moment where you had the breakthrough, the whatever, it's not all about the gratitude doesn't have to all be about just the money. So thank you for that reminder. Okay, so we are going to throw out some questions and let you guys sort of pop around with them.
Yeah, and just so you know, if once we get to the Q&A, or if you pop some questions in the chat, I'll try to monitor that as well. So if you're not comfortable in asking yourself.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, so
I
question
have a
for all of you.
question. Oh, go.
What's that?
I was gonna say I have a question.
Okay, you want to go?
So there's so many types of funding that we are talking about: crowdfunding, investors, grants, sponsorships. Is there a level of budget that you would focus on one type of fundraising compared to another? And that's open for any of you.
I can start this one. I feel like it depends on a variety of factors. I think for a lot of the people who wrote in the chat that they were more in the 5 to 30,000 or a little bit less than 5,000, crowdfunding can be the sweet spot for you because it's very flexible. You can do it anytime you're kind of ready to put a lot of work into something. You can also use crowdfunding as a way of building a community around that project, which is always very helpful. And you have a lot of control over it. Small grants can also be a really great tool for projects of that size, but you have to be a little bit more patient and a little bit more prepared to, you know, do the preparation to find the opportunities, apply for it, and then wait for a result. I would say that investment is really a much higher level kind of a project, unless you have an interesting relationship with somebody. The effort that it takes to get securities investment is not really worth lower budget projects, just because you actually have to pay legal fees and you have to file forms with the government, and it's just a lot. Also, individual donors, even if they're offline, can be a really great resource for smaller budgets.
And I'd like to add to that because I agree 1,000%. And I think that on the reverse, if you are one of the people that said more 3 million to 10 million, then this is just my personal opinion. I think crowdfunding is great for the smaller budgets, but then it still takes a lot of work. I mean, on a daily basis for months to actually raise even a small amount of money. So I always ask filmmakers that are looking at a larger budget to consider, well, if you were to take all of that time and focusing on investors that were going to give you $50,000 and above, that time would be better spent because it's going to be a long road asking people $500 to $1,000 in a crowdfunding campaign. And that's at the high end to get to a $5 million budget. So I always say, I don't think crowdfunding is the way to go and the best way to spend your energy if you're on the higher budget. I think you're better off spending all of that energy going after the higher wealth individuals at the 50,000 and above.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. And I think in addition to budget level, some of it can also depend on like the content and the position of the content with like what communities you're a part of. So if it's okay to give some examples. So I have two short documentaries that are in the $10,000 to $15,000 range each. And for one of them, it's a tattoo shop on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. It's a recovery story. And because they're in like a rural part of Maryland, but they're business owners. You know what I mean? Like they're bringing people to that area, that county. It's an area that doesn't get a lot of attention in Maryland. It felt like a really good pitch for both the state and county arts councils. So I think I applied for 3 grants and got 2 of them, which is like a great amount of effort to have to put in. And then so we got $4,000 from the Maryland State Arts Council and 3 from the Queen Anne's County Cultural Arts Division. And like again, that's because like that shop is like meaningful in the community in a certain way that we can sell, right? And then we like did one post on social media that we were going to be raising money, and a kid walked into the shop with $3,000 cash and was just like, here's the rest of your money. So that was an insane thing that happened on
Wow.
that.
How does that happen?
Yeah, they just really like, it was like their friend and he had an inheritance and he was like, I believe in your story. And it was just like, cool crap. Like we were just going to raise $3,000 online, which I felt confident about not doing like a Kickstarter or whatever, but yeah, I took one post. So that's a gift. That's a huge gift that doesn't always happen. But so that's why that one felt really like a grant opportunity to me. Whereas the other documentary that was the same budget level or similar budget level, I think we've actually ended up raising more for this one. But that one is about a band that was formed by lifers in San Quentin. 3 of them were paroled to the same sober house in 2020 and reformed the band on the outside. And so we felt really confident in one of them still has a lot of community on the outside, and one of the subjects. And I have a lot of connections in like restorative justice spaces, and so we felt really confident like these folks are not going to need to be bugged 27 times on social media. We're going to ask them for money and we think they're just going to get, so we just did like an email campaign. We still made a lookbook and a video to show like, this is a real movie. We've thought it through, we're showing we have our ducks in a row. And we raised the same amount of money from our community. So in that case, it was like, there's so many people that cared so much about them. And well, clearly the tattoo shop people care about them too. Maybe we could have raised more if we had done more of a individual donor campaign. But I just give those 2 examples to show also like who cares about your project. Is it kind of county and state grant people who also are thinking about economic development, or is it like individual humans that are invested in the content of your story, either because they care about restorative justice or it's nonfiction, there's a subject or an actor or something like that. So yeah.
So that raises actually one of the questions we've kicked around, but it seems like it fits with what all 3 of you just said, which is, we talked about the fact that when you go to a consultant or an advisor or whatever, it's like, I need you to find me an investor. Would you please find me someone who can invest in my project, right? And so the conversation that we all had when we were planning for this was, how important is the filmmakers network in raising the money, regardless the type, right? So can you all just say a few words about that? Because you started with that, Lane, a little bit. It's like the people that you came across and already knew, as opposed to consultant person, would you find me an investor, please? Which is what, many of us would love to have happen.
Well, I think that, our network is always important. And hopefully you've built your whole career to start to establish relationships just to have these conversations. But I think that it's important that every filmmaker almost like take an evaluation of what is it that I really have and who is really going to have an interest in it. So, because you might say, well, I don't know any high wealth individuals. How do I find them? Well, I think that that's where partnerships are really, really important. Who are the nonprofits or the national organization of X cause that's going to want this film to get made because I'm going to bring awareness to their cause. I'm going to be a brochure or a calling card to bring awareness to, in film gives us the ability to reach millions very easily. So that's a very easy sell. And the moment you engage, like we had a football film where we had the two biggest youth football organizations, Pop Warner and I'm going to forget the other one. But they had access to all of the youth football coaches. So now, just in alignment with them, keyed us into our audience and everybody that would care about film, like funding this film. So who can you strategically align with that has already captured your audience? It might be a brand, it might be a nonprofit. And it also helps to be able to say, like, we're going to give a portion of our proceeds to this organization. Now they're definitely going to use their network. So you've just expanded by thousands or millions. So I think strategic alliances are super, super key in that process. And also taking stock of, I have this exercise I do with filmmakers where literally it's like, what is my genre? What are my special interests? What are the causes? What am I bringing awareness to? Is it audiences over 55? Is it diversity? Is it Latino forward? Is it female forward? Like, what are all the different hooks on your film? And then what are all the organizations and individuals that's their why? And then all of a sudden you've expanded your network well beyond your personal network.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, especially because I do think that at the end of the day, if you think about how you like to be approached to give money to projects, because we're in filmmaker communities, this has probably happened to all of us as well. Is it more effective if somebody says, will you give money to my movie or my friend's movie? Probably my movie, right? Like that's just kind of a better ask. And so there is more power coming from the filmmaker, right? And it is, I think, ultimately our responsibility a lot of the time. But who is a filmmaker and who can refer to your movie as my movie can be expanded, like Sarah Elizabeth's talking about, right? So thinking about like who can you call in, and it's hard, right? Like you're essentially being like, I have this baby, does anyone want to co-parent this baby with me? But like as you're expanding your team, then there's more and more people who can say my movie when they're making that ask.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little bit more to add to that. Totally agreeing with everything already. There's also, all three of us are also representing our own projects. And so it's a little tough for us or any consultant who represents a lot of different projects to, trade in their personal relationships with people for other people's projects. So that's something just to kind of keep in mind. And nobody asked this yet, but I think that there's another piece to how you approach people and how you think about how you're approaching people that involves just having a lot of social awareness about your relationships with all the people that you're trying to connect with. I think right now, for me, I am fundraising for a feature right now. And we have a part of our campaign is a crowdfunding securities portion. And so, of course, I want to go to people who I know support my filmmaking career, but a lot of those people have not had jobs in the last couple of years because they're also in the film industry. So I have to be very conscientious that I can mention stuff to people and I can ask for them to provide support, but asking them for money right now is kind of icky. But if they feel comfortable sharing, my posts with a particular person who they know would be supportive of my project, but not necessarily put their work in jeopardy, then that's something that I can ask close friends. But sometimes I think people will create, for example, a crowdfunding campaign, or they'll post a Facebook campaign up, and they'll get very frustrated that it didn't get funded immediately. And I think there's a misconception for first time or new fundraisers that because I created this great thing, people are just going to show up and give me money. But there's a lot more work that has to be done. And there's a lot of nuance about why any particular person might give any particular project at any particular moment.
There's actually a great question in the chat. I don't know if you've already seen this, Kelly. Do you want me to do it? Do you want to do it? Because it relates right
No,
here.
go for it. Yeah.
First of all, Eric Dyson, thank you for this great question. So now you have an investor, not a cold call. And the question is, assuming you have some type of relationship with a potential investor, how do you start the conversation? And the question he goes on to say, short and direct, or do you ease into it? Like, now you're sitting there and you have something to say. How do you do it?
Yeah, I think I actually saw that question and wanted to respond because I think everybody's different, and what I'm able to say to an investor is going to be totally different than what someone else is going to be able to say just based on your personality. But 99% of the time, I have had success with never asking anybody for money. And I know that sounds crazy, but I'm sharing an opportunity, as Tracy said earlier, for you to be a part of something great. So especially if I'm connected to somebody, I think those are the easiest conversations. Like, hey, let me share what I've been working on for months. And your passion comes through. You share what you're doing, why you're doing it. You mention all of the hot points that you have as to why this is important to get out. And usually it's, do you know anybody that might want to be a part of this that I should be talking to, because we're in the fundraising stage. And in order to get this to the next level, we need to find people that can financially support it. And if my passion has gotten across, usually people say, yes, and actually, would you send me the materials too? I would have an interest. So I just take out the whole idea that I'm asking somebody for money. I'm not selling, I'm sharing. And I'm going to share. And if that resonates with you, I don't need to ask you for money. You're just naturally going to be inclined to offer that. I've had one person say, so are you asking me for money? What do you want from me? And I realized that he needed to be asked directly. But I think don't put the pressure on that you're asking. Share, it's going to come across, let them know what you're looking for. And if they have, and sometimes I'll say at the end, like, so if you know anybody, or if you want to look at the details more, I'd be happy to forward that to you. And that's typically how it's worked for me.
I just want to make a comment that when I think in terms of the things that I'm hearing from all three of you, that when you're sharing like that, when one is sharing like that, it's, I mean, Lane, what you were talking about, that there's this cool opportunity to showcase this incredible place. You don't have to say, do I want money? It's just like, hey, I'm going to do this really cool thing at this incredible place that doesn't get a visibility. It's a whole different way of thinking.
Yeah, I definitely like what you said, Sarah Elizabeth, about not asking for money, because that is definitely the hardest thing for me. And just sharing, you feel like you're out to lunch with somebody, and it's like, I feel like, and maybe this is another good question, is so if you're talking to a potential investor and you are, like Lane said, working on a zillion different projects, do you pretty much focus on sharing one project at a time with an investor so that you don't overwhelm them, like, I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I've got this? Or do you kind of throw out some things to see what sticks for them? Or
I'll add my 2 cents. I had an investor once, I shared everything, and they said, and it was somebody in the industry, and they said, I said, do you have any advice? And they said, don't flash sell me. Don't be the used car salesman. You don't want to appear desperate. So I always say, go in with the thing, do your research. What's going to speak to them? What's going to hit their why? Approach them with that. And then maybe if there's another project that comes up casually, but you don't want to be the ones like, oh, but then I have this. Oh, but then I have that. And then I have that. You'll lose. It's an energy shift. And so if they don't respond to what you say, you could say, well, I'll just send you the slate of the other things I have. And if something resonates, we can talk more. But that resonated so much when they were like, don't flash sell. It reeks of desperation. And I'm like, okay, so that's my 2 cents.
Same. I feel like I just did that yesterday, so that's why.
You do it once and you're like, oh,
Yeah, you're like, darn.
I was just going to ask Lane, because you allowed that you have multiple projects going on at the same time. So how do you keep yourself from doing that?
Yeah, I can't fundraise for more than one thing at once. So usually I do have like a fundraising phase. You know what I mean? So like usually something has been in development and then it's time to raise the money and then it's in prep and then etc. And so I think that ends up having a problem like kind of take care of itself. The most I'll do is if it's like it's Giving Tuesday. Here are my 2 things that have fiscal sponsorship. So there's a donation up, link up, whenever. You know what I mean? But like usually I'm doing a campaign like for a set amount of time. But I did want to also elaborate on like if folks, I thought that was really helpful about approaching investors, and I can share a little bit about like if you're at more of like the 5 to 30 range and you're approaching like donors. Just what I have found works well for me is to like, so I've done like the Kickstarter thing, and then I've also done like here's our donation link, but not kind of off social media, more like email and call based fundraising, which is just nicer for me because I don't have to post on social media all the time. And sometimes your movie does need to be like, sometimes you do need the social media approach, but regardless of whether I'm on a platform, I usually put together some kind of like, these are the levels for like special thanks, etc. That you'll get. And then here, I will always do a fundraising video and a lookbook for a project, just because it putting those materials together just is a nice like kind of professional way of showing what I'm gonna do, right? And feeling like there's some kind of direct contact and making sure that people know, even people who care a lot about me and will kind of fund whatever I do. I want to, it feels like a show of respect to me, right? Of like, I'm gonna wait until I really like, I'm gonna use this money tomorrow if you give it to me. You know what I mean? Like I didn't just come up with this idea and now I'm just like passing the hat, seeing if this idea has juice, right? Like I've really done my homework and and this is how I'm going to do it, you know, so that there's just a kind of like good faith by the time the ask is coming. I don't know that you have to do like an entire video and lookbook. You could do like one of those things, or your video could be like just talking to camera for 2 minutes, you know, of like, this is what I'm doing. But just kind of making sure that your project is at a place by the time the ask comes in that you can kind of show some standard of like professionalism, and that you're at a phase where like, yes, it's the time for the money to come in. Now we've done the homework, we've done our part, and now like we need to be met in this way by the community that supports this.
And when you are raising at that level, do you find it easier to go one-to-one with donors or to do it on like one of the platforms, Indiegogo, Kickstarter? Have you found anything to be more beneficial for you? Seed and Spark, like any, you know, I know there's a number of them.
I did a Kickstarter for my first feature, and that was the correct approach for that time in my life, because I think also like it was my first feature. I think that like social media is great if like you're fundraising from like, I especially, you know, I was like some age that is younger than my current age. It's in my 20s somewhere. But like, you know, I was somewhere in my 20s. A lot of my peers were broke, you know, so like when you're raising it like $20 at a time, then kind of being on social media and being like, every $20 counts, we're not going to get anything if we don't hit it, you know what I mean? Like when you're like, when it's that vibe, then I think having a platform and having an all or nothing kind of stakes to motivate you to ask every single person that you've ever met for $20. And there were people who gave a lot more than $20, but you know, it can feel that way, certainly with a Kickstarter. My stress level is just so much better when I get to do it by email, and not on a platform. But I'll still set a goal, right? I still need a certain amount of money to make the movie, right? Like I still have a bottom line fundraising amount, whether I'm on Kickstarter or not. So I'll still set a goal and I'll still set a date. Like we're trying to do it, you know, we're trying to raise $10,000 by December 1st, whatever, you know, just for the sake of having a container that's clear to people. And even then, I think, I mean, what was nice about the San Quentin documentary is we just had so much faith that people were going to want to show up that like, I think I just BCC'd people and was like, hello.
Mhm.
you know, and it was a group email. And then I think I sent some one-on-one follow-up. But with a Kickstarter, you're like sending one-on-one messages to like everyone you know at every second of every day. That was how I felt. Yeah, so it's one-on-one even if you are on a platform too, right? Like, because it's still
Right.
crowd that is doing the funding is the crowd of people you personally know, right? It's not like people aren't like trolling Kickstarter looking for your film. Maybe they are,
Yeah.
but yeah. Anyway,
I also think it depends on the project and it depends on your personality. I've had people come to me to do crowdfunding consulting, and after doing a brief conversation, I advise them not to do a crowdfunding campaign because if people have a network that is older and not super online and retired, it is easier for them actually to do checks. So it's better to then just do an email campaign or a phone call if that's how people, if the best thing is what does the project need and what is the filmmaker most comfortable with, because the approach that you're most comfortable with is the one you're more likely to be successful with.
Mhm.
So some people are really great at talking on the phone. Some people prefer email. Some people, whatever they like.
Mhm. There are definitely some good questions in the chat that we'll move to in 1 second, but I wanted to touch briefly on the sponsorship part since we hadn't really. And just for any of you, are sponsorships or in-kind donations effective? At what point in the fundraising or in the pre-production or project do you search for those things? And then how do you count them in your budget too? Do you have any thoughts on?
Well, I think that it depends on who you're going after. I think it's absolutely beneficial at the start, like on our first film, we were able to get in kind, all of our lodging was donated, all of our catering was donated. We got frequent flyer miles to fly in our cast. So those are all budget items that we were like checking off. So I think Julie or somebody had asked a question earlier that like, so when I was pitching people, I was like, we already have, our budget is 1.5 and we already have over $600,000 in kind. So now it gave, the conversation was not, oh, I'm just looking for $1 million and we don't have any of it. It was the value is, I'm making up these numbers now, the value is a $2 million project. I already have $1 million in kind through catering, lodging, donation. So now all of a sudden the money I need, you're going to have a bigger stake in a much higher valued film. So I think that those are the things absolutely start doing from the start, because you're going to be able to use those in your conversation to say, we're 60% funded. We're 40% funded. Like I was always changing those numbers to make it sound better. And that was in kind in many cases. But then on the reverse of that, there are some things like when we were going after Walmart and Kroger and companies to give us gift certificates for craft service or free water and stuff, those bigger corporations really wanted to know that you were funded and ready to go, and they weren't going to run it all the way up the corporate ladder unless they knew it was serious. So I think that it depends on who you're going after. I would say yes, at the start, go after the people that are going to give you the smaller companies and the in-kind services. But as far as actual donations from corporate, usually my experience has been you've got to wait till you're a little bit further along. That there's no period, even when we were fully financed on our first film, I was still applying for grants and I was still looking for in-kind. And we actually finished that film with 6 figures in the bank because I was like nonstop getting free money. And then I gave investors their money back before we ever sold the film, because I had saved so much. So at no point do you really, I think, stop getting sponsorship and stop getting donations. And your sponsorship can be like a 5K in a small town where you're like, if you give 10,000, if you give 5,000, if you give 1,000, your logo's bigger. We're going to put you on the side of the, at craft service every day on the side of the grip truck. And you have the ability to create whatever you need to start selling any kind of sponsorship.
Darlene, should we open it up to questions
Yeah, I
now?
think we can. I was going to ask, let me ask you a
So,
quick grant question, because I think we've had a couple of grant questions.
Yep.
So We've touched on a little bit on grants, but you know, the conventional questions people ask is like, how do I find grants? And then how hard is it to do that? And then how do I know that I fit into the grant guidelines? I think those are all kind of connected questions. And I'm just kind of curious if you can just touch on that a little bit. You know, it's sort of like grants for a lot of folks, me included, it's just this huge morass of organizations. And I think you guys have touched on this a little bit, but if you don't mind touching on it again.
I would stalk films that you think are similar to your film and try to figure out where they got their money. And if they got a grant, they're probably bragging about it on their website and or in their credits. So whether that's, you know, filmmakers in your community that you admire, if you go to a film festival and see what films, you know, how they raised funds, or just look up a film festival you like, and that, you know, you can do it all online. So just try to see, for in California, we have like californiagrants.gov where you can search for grants, either film grants, or if there's something that your film is doing other than being a film that's meaningful, that can be really helpful to search for too. So I had a commission through Dance Camera West. They got a massive grant for job creation in the Central Valley, but their pitch was to create these dance films. And they created jobs by creating dance films. It was huge. So like that's a great example. Or like, yeah, look at your county and state arts councils for sure. A lot of the time those people will also be posting other opportunities. Like in LA County, we have the Division of Arts and Culture, and so they have their own grant opportunities, but they're often reposting things. Creative Capital is the #1 most helpful resource for me. They do a monthly bulletin of upcoming residencies and grants and fellowships, and that is extremely helpful. They have a lot. It's interdisciplinary, so you're going to see a lot of like grants for sculptors and other things that I don't understand, but maybe you're a sculptor and you're happy that all of your grants are in one place now. But they definitely include film as well. So I think just starting to follow yeah, filmmakers, especially if you don't know where to start and you don't know what films are similar to yours, just start anywhere. You know, like that's part of the thing with
Just
like
start. Just start.
right. Just start somewhere with some film. And otherwise following some of these like organizations that 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 promote other opportunities can be really helpful.
Excellent.
So I think that there's 3 buckets there that you talked about. There's filmmaking grants. There are grants about what you're bringing awareness to, what your cause is. And then there's grants that are at the community level. Like we got a tobacco commission grant because they had to put money back into areas where the tobacco industry no longer was putting money into it. And we were shooting a film there. So I think area, the filmmaking, and then what are your special causes would be the 3 buckets I would say look into.
That's really helpful too, because a number of times I've gone to look in the directories and films, and then you get lost, right? So I love that there's now, think of it in 3 different buckets. That's really helpful. Yeah. All right. Yeah, Tracy, go.
Just a quick add-on. If you're going to a film directory and you're getting very overwhelmed, if the directory is searchable and it's online, then I always recommend start as specific as possible. I'm looking for grants for films by women in San Francisco, and then see if anything comes up. And if you get a whole bunch of good options, then you just hang out there for a while and just slowly broaden out your search until you get the results you need.
Yeah, the last thing to do is just to go film grants, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, don't do that.
I've done that. If anybody else is on the call has done that.
Okay, I think she might be freezing a little bit. I don't know if everybody's seeing that. So I think we'd like to open it up for questions. So if you can put us to the gallery view. Carol, I'm going to call on you first because you have the first question in the chat. If you want to ask your question, and then I'll open it up in general for people, and then yeah, I'll just open it up and raise your hand if you have a question and we'll start calling on you. And
Oh,
try to
okay.
come back on camera if you don't mind, so that they can see, that our speakers can see who they're talking to. But I'll let you ask your first question, Carol.
Oh, okay, thanks. My question was, how do you find higher net worth individuals who might invest in, let's say, a $5 million movie?
That's where I would say, Carol Lee, that you start to take inventory of what is my film about. Like, as an example, let's say it is a national. What is there a cause related specifically to your film?
Yeah, let's say it's human trafficking.
Okay, perfect. Human trafficking. What are all of the major organizations that are care about human trafficking or are bringing awareness to it? Now, who are their donors? It's like when you used to go to the ballet and the opera and you look at the programs and it has everybody that's ever donated and supported. Like, those are people that care about that particular cause. So now you've got all of those individuals, or who is on their board, who is on their staff. These are also people that care specifically about that particular cause. So I think if you get specific about who are, now you might not have direct connections to them, and that goes to, somebody had asked in the chat earlier about like, how do you actually connect with them? And I think that you're not always at the beginning looking for money. It's connecting with some of these organizations isn't, will you give me money? The ask is, can we align? Can we give you something? Maybe we'll give you a portion of our proceeds. Can we write a blog for all of your members in your newsletter? Or can we do something for social media? So now they're becoming an active member of bringing awareness to what you're doing to their donors, to their supporters, to their board of directors. So that linking early on isn't always about money. It's about continuing to build your audience to reach out. And now you have a talking point where, for anybody that's raising that kind of money, you, not to get too in the weeds, but like SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, is something you need to be very aware of. And you're not allowed to randomly just solicit to people you don't know. So these alliances allow you to say and reach out to some of these people. Again, not to say, are you looking for money? But we're in the fundraising phase. We're going to bring awareness to your particular cause. We'd love to share more. Now you're in front of their board members, and those are the high wealth individuals. Now you're in front of their donors. Those are the high wealth individuals. So that's one way, is to really start bigger and go, who cares about it? And then what can I give to them so that they're wanting to give back to me and connect to me?
So I don't know if you found, if there's like, I mean, we have a whole list of nonprofit organizations who are concerned about human trafficking. Do you think that these people don't want to let you know who their donors are? Because if they donate to you, then they won't have any money left to donate to them. And do you think that they might think that way?
I think that is, in my opinion, an abundance versus scarcity mindset. And I think that if you go in thinking that, then it's gonna propagate that the very same back to you. But I think that if you're able to offer them something that nobody else can give them, then it's not so much about, I'm just taking your money. It is, we're what is it that you're giving them beyond just, nobody's going to give you their list of donors.
No.
I've had people come to me saying, will you give me your list? Who do you go out to? I'm like, absolutely not. But so it is that strategy of, what is it that I can give to you that you're proud of advertising to your members, or you're proud of making that connection. And by virtue of that, they are now connected to you. It's tricky. I'm not going to say that it's not, but I think that there still are ways to get awareness without selling them directly. Because if somebody's interested, they're going to reach out and they're going to ask you.
Okay. Thanks for answering.
I think also, with that in mind, I think it's good not to go into conversations like that with the mindset that people will not want to share, but sometimes they won't. And just being kind of ready for that, and remembering that when you're asking people for money, no matter how you're doing it, the real trick of this is asking a lot of people and not stopping because some people are saying no.
Mm.
because your goal is to find the people who are excited to do it and have the ability to do it right now. And you just have to ask people until you find all the ones that need to be available to support you until you reach your goal.
Mm. That makes sense.
Any other questions? Anybody want to raise their hand? Beth, go for it.
Someone asked a version of this already in the chat about having a party to fundraise. I heard that idea in another training and I got really excited about it. And I was wondering if anyone here has done something like that where, yeah, a fundraising party where people come and donate money and see the presentation reel, hear from the filmmakers. Yeah, just curious.
I have my biggest opinion about fundraising events is that they shouldn't be more work and more expense to put on than what you're expecting to raise from them. But the caveat to that is if, you know, your fundraising love language is having fundraising parties, then maybe that's the thing that you do. So I do know of people who host those kinds of parties and they can be very successful. But I would say that you have to know your own personal network and you also have to know your personal interests and skill set in hosting something like that. I think those kind of events are most successful when somebody on the team or a friend of somebody on the team who can host the event already does that kind of thing and already knows how to promote projects and fundraising events at their private party. If you don't know how to do that, but you're really curious about it, you can always just start doing it and seeing how successful it is. Because my other favorite strategy is if I don't know if something is going to work, I try it and I see how it works for me.
Yeah, I think this is definitely another example of like kind of know your audience or know your donors or your givers, right? So like for the time that I hosted a fundraising event is not correct. Like if and because part of it too is not just like who is your network in general, but who is your network in this town. So like I did mine when we were doing the Kickstarter for my feature. I did it in Austin. Most of the people that I knew in Austin, I was in grad school there. And so they were other grad students or undergrads. And you know who doesn't want to do a silent auction is an undergrad. So it was not right for the people that I knew in Austin. And maybe if I had like gotten bands to donate their time and charged a $10 cover and had it been super chill and not a silent auction, maybe it would have done something. You know what I mean? Like, so maybe there's another version with that setup that would have worked fine. Or maybe if it had been in Baltimore and my parents' friends were coming, you know what I mean? Then maybe that would have been a different story. So I think very much, yeah, what Tracy said, absolutely, of like, what's your skill set, but also like the people that I knew in Austin were happy to donate online without without any silent auction items. That was how they wanted to give. Yeah.
I might have a different opinion on this, but I agree with what everybody is saying. And I never spend money on these. I've done a lot and I've had great success. And I've worked with a lot of filmmakers that have gone on to do them and they've had great success. But I never, like, I had the wine or what the wine donated, the beer donated, I had the venue donated. Like, I randomly, maybe I spent $200 or $300. I did just have a client that, even though I suggested that, she spent like $10,000 on a party. And I was like, oh, no, don't do that. But I think if you're able to get everything donated and you're able to have a hook, we're going to do a staged reading of a key scene, or like I did a screening of one of my past films and David Baldacci talked, or I had NFL players show up at one, but it becomes an event that people want to go to. I have found that they can be successful. And another hook too is, like, once you get a champion on your film, like somebody that believes in it, maybe it's your first investor. I've had a lot of them invite their friends to their home, and we did wine and cheese and I did a presentation. And there's this fear of missing out. There is this, I'm safe to hear about, I might not want to meet you one-on-one because I don't want you to pitch me and ask me for money. But if I could go to a party with people I know and hear about it, that feels safer. But then there's excitement where everybody's talking about it. And if you do it properly, there's the ability to really capitalize on that excitement, on the fear of missing out, and on that safety and numbers. And I had, just as an example, I had a party where someone raised his hand. He said, I'm interested. I can't do $50,000, but I know a lot of people here, we've been talking, we're excited, we want to be a part of it. What if we came together and came in at a share for 50,000? And that ended up at 100,000 by the end of the part, not literally by the end of the party, I had a check, but as a result of that, you know, I had $100,000. So I agree with what everybody said. It's what is your bandwidth? Who are you talking to and how are you executing it? But it can work. I could talk for an hour on that, but if you do the right strategy, I think it's possible.
Great. Thank you so much for all your tips. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Julie?
Hi, thanks for being here, everyone. I'm just wondering if any of you come from the thought process of instead of making your film out of love and, you know, just I want this project to be made, do you ever, when you're finished with let's say a film, do you ever sit back and look at all the grants and look at basically who's lobbying, like who's paying for movies to be made, and go after those grants or go after those organizations, or even film festivals? You know, do you guys, before you even start making a film, look at, what are these film festivals particularly looking for? And I'm going to make a film. Because I've never done that before, but I've recently met someone that strategically does that. She went to Yale and she was at the Harvard lab, and she literally just before every movie, she sits back and she's like, what's in style right now? What's popular right now? And who's funding that where? And that to me, I just, because I'm all about love, but there's no equity in love. So I'm just wondering, do any of you guys do that business-wise? And how does that working for you?
I can chime in. I think there's a version that I align with on that. I'm not the kind of person who's going to create something because I think the market wants it, unless it's something that I wanted to make, because it's very difficult and very stressful to make movies, as I think everybody on this call knows. Even though it's also fun, it's also very difficult and very stressful. And so I would not want to spend years working on a project that I didn't deeply believe in, and that unless somebody was paying me to do it. So my version of that is, and I'm doing that right now, is what are the film festivals, who are the distributors who are already on board with the kind of project that I'm making, and then making sure that I just kind of keep track of them and start connecting with them now before we even go into production. But for me, it's not about creating an idea around what I think the market wants, because the market keeps changing and sometimes you can't accurately predict that.
I also think there's something, I agree with what you're saying, and it's reverse engineering. There's nothing wrong with it. At the end of the day, we have to make money as filmmakers, and we have to think smart. And if we know something is not selling, then maybe I put it on the back burner. But I mean, I have a project now after 10 years, suddenly it's hot. But I finally, instead of like pushing the boulder up the hill, which I was doing forever, I stopped, put it aside, gave all the investors that were on board their money back, and now it's back. So I think we have to be aware of the market and spend our time wisely on what we're focusing on. But just because there was a major lit agency that was talking about this recently in a conversation I had with her. And she was like, you don't have to sell out. If I know that sci-fi or some genre, I already have connections. That's what they want. I can walk in tomorrow and pitch them easily. Then can I still have a project that I care about and just spin it a little bit that it fits and gives them what they want, but its heart is still fulfilling my needs and my whys. So I definitely think it's smart to look at what doors do I already have open, and how can I not abandon myself as a creative and sell out to the industry, but possibly tweak something. And sometimes it's a slight tweak that doesn't change what you're saying in your story, but puts it a little bit into a genre that all of a sudden, you've been in. So I think we have to think. I think we can't just always think creatively. I think that we always have to look at the influence of the market and the opportunities we have. And those will open up, hopefully, the door for us to have this crazy, off the wall, everything everywhere all at once that all of a sudden nobody was looking for. And now it's a hit. But that'll give you those opportunities, in my opinion.
I agree also that those later stages of where you can tweak or where you can kind of like sharpen something to meet a need, because I mean it takes long enough to write a script, but it really takes a long time to make a movie, right? So if you're looking at like what movies are popular in 2024 and then you start making your script, that movie's coming out in what, 2029? Like if we're moving pretty quick, like so it's just I think really hard for filmmakers especially to be reactive, but to be aware and strategic throughout the process is a different thing.
Yeah, and just know who's funding something and like where's that money coming from, because I've never really looked at things that way, and I'm starting to, because you can be an artist and not have to be a starving artist, and you can be a filmmaker and not have to hold so tight to your morals and values that you're living in your car. I'm not living in my car, but I'm just saying, it's like, there's nothing wrong with making money in this business, So anyways, I just wanted to ask about your guys' experience with that. Thank you guys so much for being here, and gals.
So we're going to take one last question and then we're going to wrap. Does anybody have a burning question that if they don't get to ask it, they will regret it at the end of the day?
And they.
May I ask one?
Yes, go ahead, Kenneth.
Curious, when you've raised a certain amount of funding, is it helpful to go to a production company, let's say like Blumhouse, and say, hey, we have a horror movie, we've raised X amount of dollars, and then leverage that for some sort of agreement? Or if I was able to raise, should I seek to just be totally independent for creative control?
I think that you need to ask if you've already raised that amount, then can I raise the rest? And yes, you'll have creative control, but it also gives you leverage. If that's all you think you can raise and you're there, it absolutely will give you a foot in the door to have that conversation. Any filmmaker that already has money, because the truth is that if you already have a bunch of the money, then are you able to then leverage film incentives? If it is a horror film and you're able to do it properly, can you do any kind of pre-sales? Possibly. I mean, a lot of things would have to fall into place for that. And then you might just be able to get the bank gap funding and be off to the races. So I think you need to look at seriously, what else am I capable of doing? If I've gotten this far, can I keep going, and why not? But there is also the value of aligning with a company that is going to take you on early enough that they're a part of the development, and they're going to advise you on making certain decisions that will make it more saleable or marketable early on than had you just done it in your own bubble, had creative control, and had you made these 2 tweaks, you would have sold it, but you didn't. And now you have something that's not sellable. So there's a lot of things that you need to think through, but I think they're both possible scenarios for sure.
Great. Okay. Well, I think we're going to start wrapping, and we're going to start actually by giving each one of you a moment to sort of say how to reach out to you, what's up, what's current, what's new for you, all of that. So Kelly, can you put Lane up? All right, Lane, you're on. What can you say about how we can follow you and find your work?
Sure. Hi. So I'm on Instagram at Lane Michael Stanley. And if you go to my website, which is lanemichaelstanley.com, some of these in the now streaming category are just available for free on my website. The shorts are. The feature is available on Amazon and iTunes and any other video on demand platform, basically. So yeah, feel free to keep in touch. That was everything I was supposed to say, right?
Yes, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, Tracy.
Yeah, I am actually in the middle of my private friends and family round for our feature film. I'll just let people know what it is. It's called Hiking Buddies, and it's a slasher comedy horror about a woman who's obsessed with leave no trace principles. And when people leave their trash on the hiking trail, she has to kill them. So
Awesome.
relatable
great.
content. If anybody is interested in talking to me about that, I know in the Bay Area where I'm from, there's a lot of people who care about this topic. So happy to just chat with people if they have, you know, like if you're part of a hiking group or you're part of a nonprofit that picks up trash, part of our incentives for getting people to be investors is actually going to be participating in trash pickups with us. So yeah, if anybody wants to chat, I'm available at my Gmail account on the screen. Also, I'm on Instagram at Tracy Held Writer, and my website is tracyheld.com.
Great. Thank you, Tracy. All right, Sarah Elizabeth.
Yeah, all of our films, I think, are at lifeoutloudfilms.com. They're on Amazon at this point, and I think McMillions is still on HBO. But I also, the years of, I've been producing for 25 years, and several years ago, I've been doing consulting for a while, and then seeing the need that filmmakers, wishing I could provide the resources that I had when I got started. About 5 years ago, I started No Film School, No Trust Fund, No Problem, specifically to help coach filmmakers. And I don't believe that knowledge is enough. Like, I can give you knowledge all day long, but I think we have to be inspired and motivated and have a community of like-minded individuals. So I started No Film School, No Trust Fund, No Problem. And you can find us at that website.com. I did offer, if anybody is interested, we do have a program that's very pertinent to what we talked about today, finding your first 100 investor leads. And it's an exercise that I do. It's a video. That's usually $27, but we're giving everybody here a discount. Also, I've offered a discount on one-on-one consultations if anybody has an interest there. But our membership that we provide actually only opens up twice a year, and it doesn't open up until December. But I would just say, go to our website. We have tons of free resources and blogs. We've got tons of free videos on raising money and finding investors, and we'd love to support you. So I don't know what's on this slide, but you can reach out to me. My email is there, and I'd be happy to send you a bunch of the free videos and resources that we have, any way that we can support you.
Thank you.
And we'll send an email with the recording out to everybody who registered for the event, and we can put these 2 discounts into that email so that if you click on the link, you can go sign up for Sarah's discounts if you're interested.
Thanks, Kelly. So I want to say, before I do some of the final announcements, I just want to say to the 3 panelists and to my partner, Kelly, that we are so grateful to you for sharing your wisdom, honestly, because as we talked about when we were planning this, a lot of the way you think is different than what we've heard over and over and over and over again. And I'm really, really pleased that we could give your voice a bit more space on women in film so that people can start thinking about their why and looking at where does this project fit in my community, and, you know, not worrying about asking for money, just it's bringing it in strongly. So you guys are amazing. Thank you for that. So Kelly, if you want to put up the announcements, that'd be great. All right. So the first one is that we are really, really proud to be community partners for the Mill Valley Film Festival. I think all of us know the Mill Valley Film Festival, and our very own Julie Rubio has her film premiering Tamara de Lampica and the Art of Survival. It's having 2 premiere showings. The festival runs from October 3rd through the 13th, and her film will be showing on the 11th and the 13th. If you want to check out more information about it, go to the WIFSPA website, and there are 2 post-premiere events that are going to take place that you are invited to be part of if you buy tickets to the film. Julie, did you want to say anything about it, or is that good what I just did? since this
What
is,
you did was unbelievable. Thank you so much. I am just really happy. Tickets just went on sale today, and it's an independent film and mostly women produced and directed. And yeah, no, thank you so much. I'm so excited that Women in Film is community partnering. So thank you very, very much.
and it's a remarkably provocative film. I just want to say that for people who haven't seen it, it is very provocative. It really makes you think. Okay, the next announcement is we have, as you probably all know, monthly table reads. The next one, the incubator event, is on Monday, October 21st at 7 o'clock. And you can email Carol Hall, who's on this call as well, with that address that's in the slide there, if you want to get more information about it. And the next one is one of our members, Kristen Tish, has started a Wednesday wind down. I don't know if anyone on the call has attended, but she's been really good about keeping it going. I think it's every second Wednesday of the month, but the next one is, it would have been tonight, but we're all on this call. So the next one is Wednesday, October 16th in San Francisco at Aquitaine Wine Bar. Super informal, just show up, chat, create community, and get to see people. And then the last slide is, don't forget, we do have a Women in Film merchandise store now that you can access through the link that's on this slide. And you can also access it by just going to the Women in Film website. Kelly has a shirt on right now. We all have some elements that have Women in Film on them. They're actually really good quality, so they're fun to have. And last but not least, we want to say thanks again to our community partners. So Women in Film US, Women in Film and Video New England, National Association of Independent Latino Film Producers, San Francisco Peninsula, No Film School, No Trust Fund, No Problem, and Brave Makers. They've really helped us to expand our reach. And then lastly, Kelly, do you want to do the last one, or do you want me to do it?
Sure. Lastly, just because you attended today, you are eligible for a $15 discount on your next one-year membership for Women in Film. There's the discount code right here. Don't worry if your membership is not due yet. Every time you attend an event, we'll try to have a discount code for you. But if your membership is due within the next month or so, this is perfect time to renew or to join. There's a discount code. So really appreciate it. Thank you to our speakers again, Lane, Tracy, and Sarah Elizabeth. We really appreciate your time and spending it with us. It's such great information, and I know that's where so many of us get stuck, you know. How do we pay for this now? We have a great script, we know what we want to do, but you got to have money to make it happen. And thank you to Olivia for running all our tech and stuff too.
Thanks, everyone. Olivia, you can stop the recording at this point. And thanks, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Yes, enjoy your